These testimonials are representative of my or our experiences, but the exact results and experience will be unique and individual to each person. The information provided herein is not medical advice and is not intended to substitute for the advice of your personal physician or other healthcare providers. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Beautiful Bag Podcast. I am your host, Leanne Hayden, coming to you from the loft, as you guys are getting used to me saying, so I'm going to continue to say it now. This week, we have a guest. It's not a solo episode, and it is Dan Dry Dock Shockley. We're going to get into his name too. We're going to talk about that. But Dan is retired from the U.S. Navy. We're going to talk about his whole program, his whole experience there. And then what brought him into his advocacy, being I can't even talk, and I'm not going to edit this, being in an ostomy. Guys, I got to tell you something before I even go further. The day of this recording is the day that Facebook and Instagram went down and crashed. And so Dan and I were just having this massive conversation about it. And so now I'm just all twisted. So let's get back to the show. Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, what a day. What a day. It's hey, overcome, improvise, adapt, and overcome. That's what I've learned in my military experience, and hey, that's exactly what we're doing right now. So, but thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, this is an absolute honor. I'm coming from the left coast, so you're in the loft there, Leanne. I'm over here in the left coast, out just below Sacramento, in California. So, yeah, let's get this interview going.
Exactly. That is the plan. So Dan, U.S. Navy, what did you do before we even get into your story of your ostomy and everything else? But what did you do for the U.S. Navy?
Oh my gosh, what didn't I do? Well, I was in the Navy for 22 years on active duty. I was a radioman back in the day. They called it radioman. Worked in the nerve center for the communications on ships. I was stationed on 7 different ships. 3 of those ships had been deployed to the Persian Gulf while I was on board at different times. And I've traveled, like I said, the world. I visited 22 different countries in my 22-year career. And a lot of my experience, a lot of my comrades, just plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And the mantra for the Marines, I had a lot of comrades in the Marines that I work side by side with, and they adapt, improvise, and overcome. So here we are. Not just today, but every day. Just I adapt, improvise, and overcome to the best of my ability. Of course, I'm a work in progress.
We all are work in progresses, and to have a motto and something to follow is, oh, look at me rhyming. It's a good thing. This is going to be an interesting interview, guys, this time today. So before, thank you so much for your service. Thank you. Right. We would not be where we are in this country if it wasn't for men and women like you. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you've done for our country. Seriously.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was an honor because I actually got to serve during Operation Desert Storm, then Operation Enduring and Iraqi Freedom. I was actually on the ground in Bahrain, which is a little island off the coast of Saudi Arabia. September 23rd, I reported on board of 2001, and I was there for 2 years. We kicked off both of those campaigns. Now, interestingly enough, I had just left the Persian Gulf in August of 2001 to go back to Hawaii, where I was residing at the time for convalescent leave. I had just experienced I just had an emergency appendectomy. My appendix had ruptured while I was at sea, and it had been ruptured for 5 days. So I was immediately sent over to the American Hospital, Dubai, and they did the surgery, and I was in for 10 days, and I made it. So I was home in Hawaii recovering, and I had my next assignment was going to be in Bahrain, but I wasn't going to go to the end of September. And now keep in mind, this is pre 9/11. So I recovered, or not recovered, but I was released from the hospital, and they flew me home to Hawaii. So I got home like August 16th of 2001. 9/11 happens. Okay. I'm in Hawaii and 9/11 happens.
Mhm.
I mean, that is just like, now I had to go back to the Middle East. So I left on the 21st of September, and I had to fly different routes because the Department of Defense, our personnel, there was only 5 of us, only 5 DoD personnel could fly on each flight globally. So it all had to be lined up, and it took weeks to line that stuff up. So I ended up leaving. My first flight was to LA on the evening of the 21st. On the morning of the 22nd, we landed in LaGuardia. So 11 days after the event, here I am in LaGuardia, and then my connecting flight was to Heathrow, and then to London, then down to Bahrain. So I checked in on the 23rd of September in Bahrain, and we started the Enduring Freedom right after October 1st, and then I rode that out, and then we started in Iraqi Freedom in March of 2003. I retired in September of 2003, came back to Hawaii, and started my life as a civilian.
There
At
you go.
that point, I'd been in the Navy for 22 years. So I spent half of my life in the Navy. So I didn't know what it's like to be a civilian. So I got registered with the VA healthcare system, and then started to be a civilian. And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, what an honor. What an absolute honor to, go, really, no pun intended, to go full circle.
Mhm. Exactly. Now this is full circle because now you're a VA, you're in with the VA hospital. Now let's start talking about, you were diagnosed with a hereditary colon cancer syndrome, which is the same syndrome that I have. It's Lynch syndrome. Um, let's
Well,
talk
no,
about,
no, I have attenuated FAP.
that's right.
Now, the connection is Dr. Lynch
Yes. Yep.
discovered not just Lynch syndrome, it's named after him, but he also discovered attenuated FAP, which um, he discovered that back in 1992, I believe it was. So he's credited with discovering both of those um, syndromes. But yeah, we're all in the same boat, and no pun intended. And by the way, there's a picture of Dr. Lynch and I shortly after my diagnosis. He came to Hawaii, so I got to sit down and talk to him about my journey. We stayed in touch through the years. Um, but yeah, so I was diagnosed with attenuated FAP, and germline DNA tests confirmed that mutation. As you can see, I got my DNA model back there. So my chromosome is in AFAP is in the 22nd chromosome. Actually, the mutation is APC. Okay,
Okay.
there's a difference. The mutation itself is attenuated polyposis coli. Now, I'm sorry, adenomatous polyposis coli. See, even I'm messed. Um, so the APC mutation is the key. That's in the 22nd chromosome. Now, based on your age, attenuated FAP, if you're going to be diagnosed with it, it's between 50 and 55, according to what Dr. Lynch has researched and shared with me. Now, anyone prior to that would be considered FAP. Now, I have a lot of colleagues who have FAP. It's an earlier onset, family history, they're symptomatic. Now, I'm the complete opposite. I'm on the end of that spectrum. I was 51 when I was diagnosed. I was asymptomatic and no family history. And to this day, I'm asymptomatic, and still no one in my both families know anything about this.
So
So I share
asymptomatic,
everything with all my family.
so, and that is amazing. So
Mm.
asymptomatic. So if you're asymptomatic, so did you end up having, you ended up having colon cancer? Or is
No,
it
no, no.
just,
I had, well, okay. I had high grade dysplasia, the biopsy when they took, okay, let me back up. We
yep.
did the germline DNA test. Okay. It confirmed, it took 6 weeks for the results to come in because the closest molecular oncology lab to Hawaii is in Pasadena, California.
Mhm.
So they did that test. Now, keep in mind, this was 12 years ago. Um, so now I sat down with my genetic counselor, my certified genetic counselor, and the chief colorectal surgeon, both at Tripler. That's who I was referred to from the VA. They're on the same campus, the VA Medical Center and the Tripler Army Medical Center. So I sat down with both the genetic counselor, the colorectal surgeon, and the chief of surgery. Um, Actually, the chief of surgery was a personal friend of mine. I didn't know who he was. He was the chief of surgery at the at the Tripler, but I had known him for many years prior to this, just out in public. But so they so it was I was informed that they think that I had this mutation. However, we won't know until the results come in. So we did the test. The results came back, and it was the testing was May 14th. The results came back June 29th, and I was called in to see my genetic counselor and colorectal surgeon. And in the meantime, I'd already read about the mutation they thought I had. Okay, I read about the type of surgery, a total proctocolectomy with a permanent ileostomy. In layman's terms, they remove the colon, rectum, and anus, and you're outfitted with a permanent ileostomy. Then I also read about life as an ostomate. Well, reading, is one thing, theory is one thing, but practical application is a whole new ballgame. So I read as much as I could. I had a lot of good information that was provided to me by my medical team. And when I was informed about the results, I said, well, I want the surgery. And I didn't have to have it. However, I needed it because any of those 100 polyps that they discovered on my first colonoscopy, okay, back in May 8th of 2012, I went in because of my age. I had my colonoscopy, my first one, and they found 100 polyps embedded throughout my colon, rectum, and anus. One of those polyps was creating a 8 centimeter tumor in my ascending colon, and causing an 80% blockage in my ascending colon. So when we did the surgery. When the results from the pathology of the colon came in, it took a week later. I was in the hospital for 12 days. So at the 8 day part, the 8 day mark, the chief of surgery comes in with his drinking his cup of coffee and his lab coat on. He says, "Well, Daniel, the results came in, and there was an 8 centimeter tumor in your ascending colon that was a high grade dysplasia." Now, I'm not a medical, you know, I'm not a medical type. However, I think a high grade dysplasia, I rate that as stage 0 cancer in my book. So, and by the way, the chief of surgery, his wife is the leading pathologist at Tripler. So, no pun intended, they know me inside and out. Hey, you
They
gotta have fun
definitely
with this.
do. You got to. You
So,
have to.
yeah. So that took place, and I'm in the hospital. I had 35 staples in my abdominal cavity, and then 13 staples where my anus used to be. And so recovering, and I'm just asking lots of questions. And I'd already been communicating with the UOA and a couple colon cancer organizations, and just to prepare myself mentally, because that's what I like to do. I like to prepare myself mentally. So I knew this was going to be my life, not just living with an ostomy, however, living with this mutation. Now, this mutation will and has um, impacted other organs. It's taken over my stomach, so the polyps in my stomach are too numerous to count. I go through routine endoscopic procedures. Now, up until 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, I've been going through the endoscopic procedures every year, and so 2.5 years ago, my endoscopic procedures. By the way, they're done at Palo Alto VA Hospital. The director of the GI clinic performs those because there's the particular scope that can only be done there versus other VA medical centers is the single or the double balloon enteroscopy. So there's actually no facility in Hawaii that's accredited to have that done. So I was actually flying from Hawaii to Palo Alto. So 2.5 years ago, the findings revealed a 3 centimeter adenoma in my beginning of my small intestine, the jejunum, or is what I call it. Now, with that, with those results, that wasn't there the prior year. So my GI doctor recommended that I consider surgery. Now, he considered the surgery being a pancreas sparing duodenectomy resection. And that's a mouthful. You take the beginning of the small intestine, the duodenum or the duodenum. I guess it depends on who you talk to, what day of the week it is. They remove that, they redo the bile ducts, and they take the gallbladder out. Now, up until this time, I thought that I'd be going for the Whipple procedure or a variation of a Whipple. Well, in the last 25 years, medical technology has advanced to where we have this pancreas sparing duodenectomy resection surgery for individuals with a mutation such as mine. Now, I asked, well, what I want the surgery now because I knew that this mutation will manifest in other organs, and you don't want it to get to the pancreas because we all know that's the end of the line. So I asked my GI doctor what my options were where I could have the surgery. I mean, Johns Hopkins, MD Anderson, Mayo Clinic, and he mentioned Stanford. Well, Palo Alto VA Medical Center is 2 miles down the road from Stanford. I said, well, I want Stanford. So he goes, well, I've got a surgeon over there that's done this surgery for two of my patients, and they're doing well. I said, well, I want his name because I want to go see him. And later on, after all this took place, I had found out that my GI doctor at the VA in Palo Alto is faculty at Stanford. He's on loan to the VA. So my surgeon, the surgeon he recommended, is the one who did the surgery. They're like this. So and I had this surgeon, this pancreatic cancer surgeon. He's one of the nation's leading pancreatic cancer surgeons. Now I didn't have pancreatic cancer, however, this surgery was in his
Wheelhouse.
in his realm. So I had the surgery, and everything went well. And I have checkups every 6 months with my primary care. We do full labs, and here I am. I just keep plugging away and have fun along the way.
Well, that is a long journey. And that was 12
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah. It
So,
started 12 years ago. May 8th of 2012 it started, and then I
mhm.
had the surgery July 13th of 2012. And then April 8th of 2021, I had the pancreas sparing surgery.
Mhm.
So, and who knows what's next? I have no idea. I knew that this surgery, the pancreas, that particular surgery, I knew that was going to be coming the older I get. Now, anything past that, I have no idea. I just keep with my medical team, keep an open dialogue with actually the pancreatic cancer surgeon down and my GI doctor down there in Palo Alto and Stanford, and my primary care here. So there's a lot of times I end up educating my medical team about what I have, and I carry a binder with me when I go to a medical setting, and it started out with a couple pages, and it's up to I think 90 pages now.
You have done a
And
lot of research and a lot of advocacy since all of this. You now are part, the Colon Cancer Prevention Project behind your head. I want to talk about that. Uh, you you've done a lot of that advocacy and a lot of that research. So certain things, and this is how we get to the discussion about, Dr. Lynch and how you met him and how I have Lynch syndrome, but you have a syndrome that he had, Dr. Lynch had found as well. Um, let's talk about what life has been like for you after, because you have all these things all these issues that you're going to continuously have, the polyps in your stomach and all of that. What is your advocacy like, and what is it like? What's life been like for you since then, and what's the advocacy work you're doing?
well, I consider myself an ambassador for the hereditary colon cancer syndrome community, as well as the ostomy community. But my purpose is to educate the medical students and medical professionals about this particular mutation that I have, it's also listed as a rare disease. Now, medical students are their curriculum does not include rare diseases, and attenuated FAP, according to Dr. Lynch, when we talked many years ago, it's estimated to impact less than 0.03% of the global population. Okay, global population.
Wow.
So what do we got? 7.5 billion, and you take 0.03% of that, what, 267,000 maybe? But we don't know. No one knows. So my purpose is to educate the medical students and the medical professionals about this mutation, in continuing the legacy of Dr. Lynch on the importance of early detection in hopes of saving lives, as well as being a source of inspiration and encouragement to the masses on those who hear or read about, my journey. And
Okay.
it's all about being able to adapt, improvise, and overcome. I mean, in life, we have two choices. We can react or we can respond.
Mhm.
I prefer to respond by gathering information so I can make a logical decision versus reacting and making a rash decision that I may later regret. So I try to prepare myself. And of course, my military training, my military experience, especially those 4 deployments to the Persian Gulf, that there's many times I had, sleep with one eye open because you just don't know what's going to happen. You have to be ready, plan for the worst, hope for the best. So I was able to put all that together when I was diagnosed with this mutation. And then that's a whole new journey, a whole new course that I had to set. And a lot of it was uncharted. However, I did my due diligence and I asked lots of questions. I consider myself a pleasant pest. I just keep asking questions until so, but
Until you
I do it tactful and diplomatic, but I've been told I've been a pleasant pest. I said, well, I'm honored to be a pleasant pest.
and you're pleasant about it, right? So people
That's right.
tell
Yeah.
you that
Now the thing is, I may not be a patient person, but I make a great patient.
you're
So,
love
but
those.
you have to have fun, humor along the way. You
You have
have to be. But I joke about myself just so we want to we want to help silence the stigma with the ostomy, often associated with having an ostomy, or often associated with having to go get a colonoscopy. So I mean, everybody's journey, everybody's story is going to be different. Everybody, but if you embrace it. I've embraced mine from the onset. That's what I say. I try not to tell anybody what to do. I just try to encourage them to think about, their health and have discussions with their family, have discussions with their medical team.
Mhm.
If they're gonna know. You know,
Mhm. Mhm. They will. So now let's talk about you and what have you done? You're
oh,
adapting,
what
you're
haven't I
exploring.
done?
What have you exactly? You've done you do your advocacy work, and thank you for all of that. What are some fun things, hobbies, things that you enjoy that you
Oh,
didn't know that you could one, did you know that you could still do them prior to having? Was something in your head like I'm having an ostomy, I might not be able to do X, Y, and Z. And then after, were you ever pleasantly surprised at some of those things?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things. I am now consider myself an amateur botanist, so I have a lot of different things out on our property here that I'm experimenting with. It's funny because if you remember, you're familiar with Gregor Mendel back in the 1860s. He's the founding father of genetics. Okay, and he was gardening and doing some experiments with his peas. Right, notice, and that's where he's the father of genetics from that. And so I'm out in the backyard out in my gardens for the last couple of years. I'm growing snow peas, sugar snap peas, and so here I am thinking I should have worn my Gregor Mendel shirt. I have it. And it was awesome. But um, yeah, I do that. Just that that gets me, no pun intended, down to earth, really. Because I look at that, I kind of think of things that have been going on for, you got Dr. Lynch started doing his research in the early 60s, and he's the founding father of hereditary cancer, research. Take February 28th of 1953, Crick and Watson. They were in the Eagle Cafe there in Cambridge, and they discovered the DNA double helix. So you go from Gregor Mendel to 1860s, go to 1953, Crick and Watson, go to the early 60s when Dr. Lynch was doing his hereditary cancer research. So I started bringing all that in to see what I can help out with. And that's why I found out the medical community, their students are not taught about rare diseases. So I figured I'd help out with that. So I've been a live case presentation for Rutgers University, Penn Medicine in Philly, virtually, of course. The University of Michigan, hereditary, they have a board there that I've been part of over the years. University of Texas in San Antonio has I've been, actually, I was there for a multidisciplinary conference many years ago. Then I did them virtually about the mutation that I have for their GI students. And I've been the University of Hawaii, their residency program. The Tripler had their Department of Medicine. I was a live case presentation for them, and an oncology convention, their conference they had in Hawaii. Back in 2015, I think it was. I was a live case presentation for them. So I'd like to do that anytime I can, virtually, to give back to the medical students. Then I ask my legislative members, depending on where I'm living, if they would sponsor either an Ostomy Awareness Day or for that campaign, or March being the Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. So actually, yesterday I was at the state capitol in Sacramento, and I reside in a district. Senator Roger Nilo, he sponsored this the CRC Awareness Month on behalf of the Fight CRC organization, and I've been collaborating with them over the years. So I was just asking for a commemorative message. So he authored a Senate concurrent resolution designating month of March as CRC Awareness Month in California. So I was invited to attend when he introduced it on the Senate floor yesterday. I was in the gallery up on the third level in the gallery, and he introduced it. It unanimously passed 34-0, and then he read my bio and introduced me. So I stood up and I was waving to everybody, and there'll be video footage of it later. But I had some of my colleagues with me. But that was, and we did the same thing actually for the Ostomy Awareness Day. We did that. He introduced an Ostomy Awareness Day resolution, Senate concurrent resolution. So we'll be doing that again this year because this is World Ostomy Day. So Senator Nilo and I have communicated about these efforts, and we'll continue with that. The 19th of this month, I'll be with the City Council here in Galt, and they'll be presenting their proclamation to me on behalf of the Fight CRC organization. So, and then the Sacramento Board of Supervisors, they're going to issue their resolution for designating March as CRC Awareness Month in this county of Sacramento. So I do this for the Ostomy Awareness Day campaign as well. And that's just a few of the things. I've been collaborating with organizations globally as well as individuals globally. So if you Google my name, the last count, I think there was 31 articles out there about me, whether I had written them or I had contributed to them. If there's a photo of me, then there's a really good high percentage chance that I actually submitted that or approved the draft. There's probably 15 podcasts that I've been a guest on, And thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Oh,
But
you're so
I
welcome.
just continue to reach out. I mean, I live for this literally, because if it wasn't for Dr. Lynch and his research, who knows what would have happened. I mean, and honestly, now who knows what's going to happen in the future. But all I try to do is I try to stay grounded, no pun intended, and have do my gardening and have all kinds of things going on. Back last week, I just had 4 cubic yards of garden soil from our locally sourced here. We have a Galt Rock. Um, um, they dropped it off in their dump truck, and I've been shoveling that for a day and a half, taking my time, staying hydrated,
Yeah, we don't have to
and
worry about that here. It's still cold.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah. I've been trying. I've been just chomping at the bit. I had a bunch of seedlings going. I've got what do I have? I got a whole bunch of marigold seedlings going now. I want the marigolds to bloom because then they help keep the aphids away from. I've got various pumpkins, seedlings, gourd, uh, Indian corn, snow peas, um, and there's a few other things out there. But I try to get that stuff started now, and I'm going to have lots of different. I have a lot of raised beds out back. Then I use a lot of redwood, old fencing material, because redwood doesn't won't rot out. It's
Mhm.
pest resistant. So, yeah, I do that. We have 2 puppies. We have a um, Australian Shepherd Retriever mix that she's a year old, and she's a handful. And we got her. I got her from my wife Valentine's Day last year, and we got her. And she was like 5 or 6 pounds, and she's like 50 pounds now. We rescued this this. We think it's a Papillon, and we rescued her from. It was a she was her. By the way, this Papillon, her name is Nellie, and cutest little puppy. And she was hanging around some restaurant down in Old Town Gulf, and we had heard about it through one of those what is it, the next door app, whatever it is. And they said if somebody wants to adopt, and so or rescue her. I said, yeah, well. So she was real skinny, and we, Paul and my wife and I, we nursed her to health, and so her name is Nellie. And then a couple months later, we had we got this Australian Shepherd, and her name is Sadie Mae, and she's beige, and she's got a blue eye, and she's got a brown eye. And now Sadie's like 50 pounds, and her and Nellie are best buds. You got Nellie's about a pound and a half, maybe 2 pounds, and then you got the 50 pound. The two of them just, it's a hoot. It's a real. I mean, we call her the Critter Squad because they just entertain us. And then I have a Chihuahua Whippet, and his name is Sam, and I rescued him. He's 8 years old, and his name was Sam when I got him, so I considered him my Sacramento area mascot. So I don't know. Hey, have fun with it.
Have
But
fun.
Sam and I would sit there, Sam and I would sit there and watch the 2 puppies play, and then we take them out in the yard, and there we had a doggy door. Okay, we have a medium-sized doggy door. And do you know that that Sadie, the shepherd, she'll blast through that door like it's nobody's business. We don't have to get a big one. We got the medium size, and she goes through it. She's been going through it since she's a puppy. I mean, she still is a puppy, but so we don't have to we don't have to think about taking them out. They just go on their own.
Well,
And
that's the easy thing. All my kids have dogs, and it's always, I gotta go home and let the dogs out. Gotta go let the dogs out all the time.
yeah, we have standing food dish and plenty of water troughs for them. And yeah, they just take their time. They eat what they want, and then we go play. And as the weather gets warmer, I'll be spending more time out. And I've got gardens going on both sides of the property and the back,
I
and
love that.
raised beds, and I got plenty of soil,
Yeah, you do. You
plenty of
definitely,
seeds too. But
exactly.
yeah, so I
Well,
do that. I used to play. I know I'm going to jump into this. I used to play um, vintage baseball. Okay, back in we played by the 1863 rules. Okay, no gloves. Okay, and yeah, this really interesting. This was back when baseball started, okay? And I had only played 3 games with the on the league because well, I'll share what happened to me. And so they play. One of the rules is you cannot overrun first base. Okay, there's no balls and strikes counted. The umpire is actually called the judge, and he stands behind home plate. And the pitcher can just keep, and you pitch underhand, okay, and no gloves. And the when the if the you have a fly ball, if it bounces once on the ground, you catch it on a hop, it's still an out. Okay, so my third game playing for the Sacramento, the Central Valley Vintage Baseball Club. They had 4 teams in the club, and I was playing for one of the clubs, one of the teams on the club. And we just play in parks. We just go. Once a month they'll go out and they'll go to a particular park. Depends on what city we were playing in. And we wear the uniform that they had a shirt that that team would wear back in the day, back in the 1800s, right? Something, because you had farmers coming off their fields going to play ball. So anyway, I was playing for I played first base, and once again, no equipment, no gloves, and so the third game I showed up and they asked if I'd like to pitch. I'd give it a go. So I pitched, and there was a there was a pop up in front of home plate. It was actually in between home plate and the pitcher's mound. So I saw the ball go up in the air, and I'm thinking, well, I got to get that. I'm going to wait to see what the catcher's going to do. The catcher didn't go at the ball, so I started running, and I knew I couldn't catch it on the fly, so I dove. Okay, I dove, leaning to my right. I'm sorry, leaning to my left side, but I'm left-handed, so I had my glove hand. If I had a glove, I catch it with my right hand, right? So I dove, and I got the ball on the hop. But all I remember is I'm laying on the ground and I'm looking up, and all the team members are standing over looking at me. I'm looking up and I see all these faces, and I look down and the ball was in my hand, and I said, "Oh, I caught the ball. Batter's out." And they all started laughing. Well, I immediately had to get rushed to the hospital.
Yeah, what
Come to
happened?
find out, I had a concussion. I had 5 fractured ribs, and I had a lacerated kidney. Because when I caught the ball, when I rolled, because I purposely stay on my other side because my ostomy was fine,
Mhm.
because I rolled on my left side, but the ball in my hand went under my rib cage on my left side, and it cracked 5 of my ribs. Well, by the way, I only have a left kidney. I was born with only one kidney, so it was lacerated. So when I got to the VA medical center in Sacramento, in Mather, they immediately code 3'd me over to a trauma unit at in Carmichael, the next door. And I was in the hospital. I was in a trauma unit for 3 days. Everything went fine. I recovered, and but what happened with this vintage baseball team, when I first started playing, we had individuals with the same name on the lineup, and to avoid confusion, it was recommended that we have a vintage themed um, nickname. Okay, so I said, okay, well, you just call me Dry Dock. I go, oh, Dry Dock, what's that all about? I said, well, I was in the Navy. I was on board the USS Abraham Lincoln. Okay, 1863 is the era that they were playing ball back then. Well, that was the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln was our president.
Mhm.
Okay, my home of record before I joined the Navy was Illinois, the land of Lincoln. And I said, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And when we got back from the Persian Gulf on the Abraham Lincoln, we went into the dry dock up in Bremerton for a year.
So
So
that's where
there
it
you
comes
have it.
from. So
That's
that's
where it
where
came
it
from.
comes from.
I'm not one to give myself a nickname, but that one fit, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, I love that story, and I'm glad you're sticking to it. And
Yeah.
Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show this week and for sharing your story, for educating us on, the genetics of it all, what you're doing out there. And thank you for thank you for all that you've done for this country. And, thank you for all the advocacy that you're doing. I asked this question to everyone at the very end of the podcast episode. If there was one thing that you wanted to leave our listeners with, what would that be?
Oh, beautiful. Well, I'm going to leave you with my mantra: always forge ahead with a purpose, because that's what our life is all about. What my life is all about. And if you take the first letter of each of those words, always forge ahead with a purpose. You know what that spells?
What does it spell?
AFAP.
AFAP. There you go. Right? That
So,
is the genetics, right? Tying it
yep,
all together.
that's right. Come full circle.
Full
Yeah.
circle. Well, Dan, I want to thank you again so much for being here with us this week. If the listeners wanted to reach out and connect with you, where would be the best place for them to go?
Instagram, I'm on there. Dan Dry Dock. I'm on LinkedIn, Dan Dry Dock Shockley. I'm on Twitter, and for some reason my name is Dry Shockley. So, but I'm on all three of those platforms, and then you can, you want to provide my email address, that's fine. Dan Drydock at gmail.com. And anybody wants to communicate, they can read about my journey on Google.
Mhm.
My name, and the articles are out there. And yeah, it's been an amazing ride. And everything I do is all gratis. This is my way of that, like that movie years ago or decades ago, Pay It Forward. That's my life. I just want to give back, I'm enjoying the ride, and I just want everybody else to, realize that, we'll try to we hope to silence the stigma often associated with life as an ostomate, and, dealing with the colonoscopy, you know, prep and things like that, you know,
Mhm.
you- just to encourage the individuals just to, have an open mind, you know, and, always forge ahead with a purpose.
And that's how we're going to end it this week, everybody. Thank you for listening in. Always forge ahead with a purpose. Dan, thank you again so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much. My honor.